which suddenly the studio and everybody got very excited that they now had a new approach, which was great for me because I got the directing job, but was not great for me was there was no new equipment. It was all very old. The cameras would jam. And I had a producer that wasn't big into spending a lot of money, but we got Aeroflex to make us some new 3D cameras. Well, the second week of shooting, we had to reshoot the first week because they didn't work together, the film. Anyway, that was a handful because 3D at that time, it had been done in the 50s and then it had sort of dropped it for a long time. So we brought it back. It's much different than today when the new 3D movies. So we were doing 35 millimeter and cutting the film, or basically splitting. The top half would be the left eye, the bottom half would be the right eye. So I had like a slit of an aperture to compose the film on. It was, to say the least, it was a real handful to do.
And of course, if you compare the 3D back then to the 3D now, would you say if you tried another 3D, would you think it'd be easier or a lot more difficult?
Oh, it'd be so much easier today, so much easier, and with cameras. And, you're not using film, they're doing electronic, I mean, it's a whole different world. Technically, I mean, we're talking 40 years ago, and this was 82. So that was, 30-something, 38 years. Yeah, it was quite different. And, but the critics were criticizing actually the first Jaws did not get good reviews. The second one was a sequel. They sort of bashed that, and the third one they bashed that too. But what's interesting is they still keep playing those movies. They seem to be very popular on television. Now, Jaws 4 I had nothing to do with. That was, I was sort of out of it by then with Jaws. I've done 3 of them, so.
And, of course, you ventured into others, too, like Close Encounter of the Third Kind, and influenced by Devil's Tower in Wyoming, and also Escape from New York. So you can also give us a few minutes on talking about those experiences.
Yeah, actually, if you look at, I think it's on YouTube, Devil's Tower, Joe Alves, there's a 2.5-minute video of me walking around Devil's Tower a couple of years ago. What happened was the Park Commission of Wyoming was promoting their various activities like Yellowstone and the rodeos and stuff. And Devil's Tower has now become a place to go visit because they shot a movie there. And it's most interesting. So they had me there 2 years ago. Wonderful young film crew, and they shot me doing. I had shots that I had taken with myself and Devil's Tower, and shots with Spielberg and Vilmos Zsigmond, the cameraman, and 40 years ago. So they had me come back and do the same shots and then walk around the tower. But how that all came about is sort of interesting. After Jaws, Stephen and I went skiing. We went up to Lake Mammoth to ski, and we got sort of snowed in. But he was talking about doing a movie called Bingo Long and His Traveling All-Stars. And so I brought it was about black baseball in the 30s, and I brought Time magazines and all, researching the baseball of that period. And then he started talking about this script he was working on called Watch the Sky. And it was based a lot on this book, Alan Hynek's UFO Scientific Inquiry. And they had 3 chapters, Close Encounters of the First Kind, Second Kind, Third Kind. And it was pretty fascinating. And I said, my gosh, this sounds a little bit more interesting than the baseball movie, Mm-hmm. And he says, well, I don't have a deal, So anyway, we came back. I didn't hear from Stephen for a while, and I got a call from John Badham, a director that I worked with on Night Gallery, and he said he was doing this movie called Bingo Long, and I was already committed to do something else at the time. And I said, well, I guess Stephen's not doing that. So I did a movie with Rock Hudson called Embryo. It didn't really do much, but so after that, Stephen got a deal, and he said, you know, the studio said, we're going to shoot everything on the lot. It's going to be a low-budget sci-fi movie, maybe, you know, $4 million at the most, and we'll shoot the stuff on the sets in the studio here in the back lot. But we need a very interesting mountain, you know. So I said, okay. So Stephen was promoting. What was he promoting? It's something, I don't know if it was Jaws overseas or something like that. And so he just said, you know, go find a mountain. So basically I flew up to South Dakota, and I looked at the back of Mount Rushmore. I thought it might have some interesting rocks, you know, the back of and then I drove to Chimney Rock and Ship Rock and, God, no, about 3,000 miles. And I came up to Devil's Tower, and it was like it's incredible. It was just majestic, you know, and it had sort of a spiritual quality to it. So that's how we got that location. And then the script originally had behind the Devil's Tower was an encampment, like a military encampment. And I talked to Stephen about maybe we should have like a big arena. This is a very important event. And Stephen agreed. And so I made some models to fit it into the biggest stage they had at Warner Brothers, at stage 15, 16, where they shot Camelot. And the head of production there said, what's the matter? I said, well, I think it looks a little small. And he was saying, well, you know, you guys have made this big movie now. You think you can spend all the money in the world. In any case, I made a model to show the size of it. And the studio was very interested. They needed a big production. And they said, what do you think? I said, I think it's a little bit small. So then they said, well, what do you think? I said, I think it should be 4 times that size. So I made a model 4 times that size. And then it was like, where are you going to shoot it? And we needed an enclosure. We brought Doug Trumbull on, incredible effects guy who did Space Odyssey and stuff. And we needed an enclosure. We needed to be in a set so that we could control the light. So after much looking at airplane hangars and stuff, I found a hangar in Mobile, Alabama, and we built it there. And so at the time, it was the biggest set ever built inside an enclosure. So that's how that little small effects sci-fi movie, and then it just grew, you know, and it became fairly successful.
And that is amazing, too. We've been out to Devil's Tower ourselves, too. It was a great trip, South Dakota, Mount Rushmore and everything. But then when it comes to Escape from New York, reading that you built the set at the time, it was the largest ever in the Guinness Book of World Records, only be struck down a few years afterwards by the James Bond film. So tell us about Escape from New York while we have a few minutes.
Escape to New York was interesting. I had, at that time, pursued directing, and what happened was, because I had been doing these big pictures, and I had a movie I was going to direct about auto racing, Formula One racing in Europe. I came back. The studio had been sold. The next week, my father died, and my agent said, "You got to go to work." And there's some young film director, producer I want you to meet, John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, and they got this film and blah blah blah, you know. And I said, okay. So I met them, and they had made small movies, you know, Halloween and The Fog. And so, anyway, the relationship was really very nice. And we just approached it. I needed a bridge where nobody was using a full-size bridge, and then I could put a wall, and that was New York. And so we looked all over, and I finally found it in St. Louis. So once we were in St. Louis, we found that the urban renewal, they were redoing downtown, so they allowed us to go there and throw junk every night, and we built the rubble there, and then they had a great train station, an old train station. In the meantime, I had built a set in L.A. outside of the United States Police Force, very sort of dramatic, German Gestapo kind, crisp lines and stuff. And we had one shot in New York, and I had built this entry place where Tommy Atkins walks through, and you see him sign in, and he walks through. Well, we were so low budget, we collapsed that, drove it across the country, took the last ferry out to Liberty Island, set it up. Tommy walks down the Statue of Liberty, walks through the entranceway, and Dean Cundy, incredible cameraman, is panning through, United States Police Force, and then he pans through just black. He cuts. We put the set back on the truck, take it back to L.A., set it up. He moves the camera exactly same position, same distance, and he continues the pan, and he comes out, and he's in L.A. No special effects. We go from the Statue of Liberty to L.A., and it was just incredible. And a lot of that movie was shot that way. I mean, it was sort of, no real CGI, but we did do some CGI, and I'll tell you that story real briefly. So Dean Cundy was an incredible cameraman, and I was very fortunate because I found an old DC-8 for sale in St. Louis that I bought for like $5,000, and we took that, and that was the burning plane that they walked by. Kurt Russell walks by. But we're looking for, Deborah Hill and I, we're looking for somebody to do special effects. So I take her over to John Dykstra, who did special effects for Star Wars, and other people that I knew that did these big movies. And she comes out and she said, well, we can't afford that. This is a low-budget movie, So anyway, a week or so later, I'm at a party with a friend of mine who's directing this movie, and he's got this young illustrator there who's done some work for him. And I'm talking to this guy, and I said, yeah, we're trying to find something. He says, well, we could do it for you. I work at Roger Corman, and we could do the effects. And that was Jim Cameron. And did Jim Cameron go ahead and do some big movies after that? It was pretty amazing.
That is amazing. It's amazing. And, of course, we're running out of time. And before I let you go, and, of course, tell us about your upcoming projects. And also, next time, we'd love to have you back on. Tell us about your book. And in the meantime, tell us where can we purchase your book at? Okay.
Right now, it's at Catalina because there's a big Jaws show at the Catalina Museum. It ends in September, but you could buy the book at catalinamuseum.org.
catalinamuseum.org. Okay.
Joe Alves, Designing Jaws.
All right, that's great. Thank you very much, Joe. It's been great. We'd like to have you on again, and thanks for taking the time. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you.
You've been listening to The Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios at themikewagnershow.com. Visit sonicwebstudios.com today for all your web design needs. If you would like to be a sponsor of The Mike Wagner Show, call or text at 701-301-7705 or email to mike@themikewagnershow.com. If you're a listener and would like to support our program, visit themikewagnershow.com and click on the support button and donate today. Thanks for listening, and tune in again next time on The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com.